bling, 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 bling. Hey.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back, 2023. This is Peg. Just tell me where you were born and you know how you got to Rhode Island, etc.
Well, I'm a Hoosier. I was born in Gary, Indiana in 1937 in Mercy Hospital. And I'm proud to be in Rhode Island and be a person of Little Rhodey.
Well, you know what, Mr. Morgan? I'm going to call you Mr. Morgan. Some people call you Jerry. For those of you who didn't catch that, he said Gary, Indiana. What other world famous group is from Gary, Indiana? The world famous Jackson 5. Would you elaborate?
Yes, I knew the family. We lived actually in the 23rd block of Gary, but the Jackson family lived about 2 car lengths I should say, away from our high school, which was Gary Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And they lived 23rd Monroe, and I lived in 23rd in Pennsylvania. But that's 12 blocks apart. I lived exactly 12 blocks from school. The street Broadway separates, named after the presidents, and that was part of our history, Washington, Jefferson, Adams, so forth. And going the other way, along with the real local community and the school, set the education and the upbringing for my whole family. And of course the steel mill, that played a major part of Gary, Indiana's subsistence.
And you came along as we spoke in the green room during the time, and I caught a little bit of it, where it takes a village to raise a child. And we kind of touched on that just a tad, especially when you were screwing up out there.
About the community, and basically, if you were doing something you shouldn't be doing, is I'm gonna call your parents.
And then you be in Sunday school, and of course she's gonna pass that message on, and then you're gonna get lashes times 2.
Yeah.
So I hear you. Humbled to have one of Rhode Island's finest, Mr. Jerry Morgan. I know that a lot of you, when you look at this man, you're gonna know exactly who he is, obviously through the golf teachings, etc. But we'll get into that a little later. As a matter of fact, I'm so honored, and there's so much information that I want to cover that I've decided that I'm gonna do 2 shows. So we're gonna do a part 1 and a part 2. So as we continue though, but Gary was more of a blue collar town. Is that what you say?
It was a mixture, but primarily a steel mill in the world, I understand, at one time or another.
Is that right?
Covered roughly almost 30 miles of the lake.
Oh, wow.
And we're close enough to Chicago for when we would drive directly into the mill to 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour, you could be downtown and loop in Chicago. So we were right at the very tip of the lake, and it drew a lot of people during the Industrial Revolution to Gary
Industrial
from other parts of the
Revolution,
country.
right. I always thought that Pittsburgh was the steel.
It is a steel capital.
Yeah.
Always was, yeah.
But you're telling me, you're educating me on the fact that Gary almost rivaled it because he was part of one of the largest in the world almost. That's amazing. I did not know that.
Well, as far as a rival,
Maybe not a rival, just the fact that you guys were actually that big in the steel. There.
country, and especially state of Alabama, and my dad, Gary.
Terrell.
To speak of Mr. Teleferro,
Yes, sir.
because he was an idol of mine.
Go next.
Well, I had older brothers and sisters, and we all were active.
That was Caesar, by the way. You tell him about that, and you tell him what we were doing.
Okay.
So obviously he's meant to be on the show.
Okay,
See how
well-
this flows? I told you it
Well,
flows.
Caesar, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But it's only to make your profession and yourself more well known.
Yeah.
So I hope you'll see him soon.
Oh, that's going to happen. So your father, he spoke to your mom. He said, "Let's go for a better life. Let's go to Rhode Island." How did that happen?
Well, actually, my parents met in Gary.
Oh, okay. All right.
And both sides of the family worked in the steel mill. My mother's side of the family, male, were veterans.
As in military,
Military, yeah.
Marine, or
Army,
yeah. Okay.
and most of the rest of the family were Air Force people.
Yeah.
But whenever I said on the piano, an upright piano, and we didn't know exactly what he was doing, but we enjoyed the music. But we know it was classical music from Chopin on down. His music in Hollywood.
That's nice. So you're giving me a perfect segue. Watching Peg TV. I float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, but I found a man better than me. He float like a butterfly. Those of you who don't know, I'm so honored. But you spoke about the music there in Gary, Indiana, and there's something that you and I actually shared in common. We finally kind of hooked up with this "Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time
Yes,
to
sir.
go."
Yes, sir.
The Spanos.
The Spaniels.
Spaniels.
Yeah.
They come from there. I know that song well.
I grew up with the Spaniels. I have a nice picture of them when they eventually ended up coming to the Newport Jazz Festival.
Wow.
And there's a picture in my folder, and they were before the Jackson 5.
Yes, sir.
As we were. And we were all chasing balls, and we went our different ways, but we had an excellent music program in the school, and they eventually developed themselves. And their famous song, "Good Night, Sweetheart," was Patti Page picked up the song and sang it.
Patti Page. Wow.
And they had to pay a percentage because the Spaniards were still minors
Okay.
when they developed that song. Good
That
night,
was a
sweetheart.
world-class song. I always tried to be like Bowser and do the bass.
Yeah.
Good night, sweetheart.
That's
Well, it's
Gerald.
time
That was Gerald
to
Benton.
go.
Have his picture right there.
That's a
Do, do,
classic.
do, do,
Do,
Good
do,
night.
do. See how much fun we having here,
Well-
ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, that's amazing. So Gary is known for the Spaniels. That's
Right.
incredible. So when you came here, how old were you, as in Rhode Island?
Well,
Roughly.
I had to
roughly.
be roughly 23 years old.
Okay.
24 years after college. Well, of course, after college.
Yeah.
So.
And where'd you go to school at, Jerry?
After Gary Roosevelt, an older brother was getting out of military service in Michigan, Japan, and he was an outstanding athlete. and a track man. So people in the military had connections at University of Oregon, Eugene.
Yeah.
And so they made a phone call, and I was supposed to meet them in Eugene because he was coming from overseas, and we needed to get to school right away.
Yes.
But
you know, funny, not to cut you off, funny that you speak about athletics and Oregon. Steve Prefontaine, and we want to both give a shout out to Mr. Holly Walton, the number one camera guy in the business, for bringing this great man to the set. We've been trying and trying, so I would like to take this time out with PEG RITV, the Ernest Faison Show, to personally thank Mr. Holly Walton for his persistence and consistence for actually making this become a reality to get Mr. Jerry Morgan on the show. So, yeah.
he was a young man who ran track at Hope High School, and I can see him
Talking about
doing
Holly Walton?
Holly Walton.
Yes, sir.
And I
Hollywood.
can see him as clear as day. So when he was 14th in high school and doing extremely well.
Yeah, it's amazing, really, and to know that those legs that he walked on have ran over 156,000. It's mine. That's
From
coming
your
from
heart,
the coach.
and it's coming from my heart too.
Mr. Moore.
Well, I'm 85.
85 years, spry young, ladies and gentlemen, and everything still works. He's just as sharp as a tack, and it's an honor for him to recall the history. I've got to look at it in the books.
Well, also,
I got a mouthpiece here to let me know exactly how it happened and what kind of suit they had on and what kind of car they were riding, for God's sakes.
well, I can take you back, and when I think of Holly Walton, it takes the kink out of my back and makes me 6'3" again. Believe me.
Man, oh man, that's true. I mean, Holly is a plethora of information, because it's because of Holly that I was able to get a lot of very important people on the show. So
Yes.
we definitely want to both send our kudos to him. So you're 23, you're 24. Now you're in Rhode Island. You're in college. What was your fascination?
Well, I finished my graduate work in Rhode Island at URI.
Okay,
But
you got the
I
master's. Where'd
went
you get a
to-
master's in?
well, health, physical education, recreation, and dance.
And dance.
It all happens in a gym, but that's physical education.
Okay.
My brother's high school transcript didn't have a foreign language on it
Yes.
in high school, so we had some connections, and instead of going to Eugene, we ended up in Ventura, California, at the junior college. And things went well there. We did well in football, and ended up a scholarship. Lived on the big house down on the beach that was provided for other players. And instead of going to the University of Oregon, we were recruited, and we ended up in our sophomore year at the University of Washington, playing for Jim Owens. And from that point, I got, you might call it politics, but most of the people that know me here would know me as a quarterback, but I didn't
We'll get
grow up
into
playing
that.
a quarterback.
Yeah,
But,
we'll get into that.
Okay.
By the way, a little nugget there. Speaking about, I wanted to revisit the Holly Walton thing. He said that it was you better make sure that you front and center in that gym class.
Oh yeah.
Because you had numbers or whatever, and you needed to step to it. Otherwise, it's probably going to end badly for you.
Well, well, then too, there were things, discipline that that existed then. I hope they still existed. That like you were mandatory to take physical education, and you were mandatory to take a shower after. And
and the paying attention to detail to all of the things which have pushed you forward through that, would you say?
well, It comes from an absence. Like I said, my mother passed away, but I have an aunt that she saw. You know, she started swinging. She didn't say nothing.
You started swinging.
And that carried over to as I might have mentioned to you before, into our high school upbringing. The discipline in the high school was there as well, because making a phone call, they didn't have to make it from school. We had our own discipline.
Right.
And the language department. You were corrected.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And if you didn't have your hiney showing, your belt was pulled up and tied, okay, and your shoes were tied up, and it was yes sir and no sir.
We'll give you some education. you know, Jerry, Mr. Morgan, you're watching PEG RITV. I hope that you're enjoying this show as much as I am, and picking this man's brain, because he laid the groundwork for people who came behind him, and that would be my generation and the things they had to go through, and that we're still going through, and we hope this is going to be a better day, and it's going to be a better day because we believe the glass is half full. But his generations set the tone for what it is that allows me to do what I do. We spoke about Nat King Cole, the first African American, by the way, FYI, African American to have his own TV show. And if he doesn't break those barriers, then yours truly is not on this set. So just want to give a kudos. And Caesar, Caesar, if you listening, I want you on this show because it speaks good about you. Oh, by the way, you're a frat brother too.
Yes.
So like I say, we're gonna do a part 2. This man has a lot of things, and I have to do him the right justice by doing a part 2. So as we continue to wind down this show, there is a part 2 to this interview. So as you got that discipline from your aunt who came swinging with that broomstick, what did that teach you?
Well, she didn't have to do a lot of that because we know from the last time she was there, she was coming back.
Right.
And, you know, Dad was probably working in the mill. And I have to give him some kudos. The man worked at a steel mill for 44 years and never missed a day of work.
44 years, never missed a day of work?
That's right.
God bless.
His name was Cleve. Cleveland Morgan.
That's something. You know, that's, you got to step back and even just let that even just sink in. That 44 years, that's back in the old school.
Yeah.
Never missed a day of work.
Yeah.
Sounds like my granddaddy. My grandfather was born in 1910, ladies and gentlemen. Now you think African American owning his own business. He had a wood yard, and he took wood around to all of the different people back then. That's why you said it takes a village to raise a kid.
Right.
And me being a young whippersnapper, go take these collard greens to Miss Laura Bird.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Miss Bird was 100 years old.
So,
So I don't care what color you are, respect older people.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, I don't care what they look like, what area code, black, white, green, or yellow. I was taught to respect older people. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't be able to sit down, if you know what I mean, for about 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. But we probably got about another 4 or 5 more minutes before we, what we got there, Bill? How many? 5 minutes? Good. So
I got one thing I'd like to bring
go
up about my dad.
Hey, the floor is yours, sir. Go ahead.
After work, he'd come home and he was good with his hands, and people would come by that had car trouble, couldn't afford to have their car fixed. I don't know if you've heard the old cliche of guys putting a broomstick in the car and putting it to their head and knew what was wrong with the car. Well, my dad was one of those people, and he would repair cars, and some people couldn't afford it, as long as they could afford to have whatever he needed to fix their car with. And we would be somewhat upset about that sometimes because he didn't get a chance to come home and go to the bathroom. And he was a great cook, and Loved him dearly.
Jack of all trades, master of some.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be my grandfather. I mean,
yeah.
my grandfather, I mean, he worked on cars. I mean, he built houses. And he, oh, by the way, he wasn't no taller than 4'11". They called him the little big man.
Is that right? Okay.
Winfield Scott Robinson.
Okay.
Yeah. I love him. I miss him. I know he's up there in a better place, and hopefully, Mr. Morgan, one day, I'm not trying to rush it, that I'll be able to get there.
Oh, yeah.
Watching Peg RITV. Don't you dare touch that dial, because I'm coming back with this man for a part 2. We got some more stuff, and he comes bearing gifts too.
I got friends in high places too.
Yeah, sit back. Go take whatever you need to do, a station ID, because we're going to give it to you uncut, live, and direct. Yeah, my grandfather, I mean, I was his buddy. And I would run with him on the truck and go deliver wood. And then on Sundays, all the kids would sit around and he'd pull out his electric guitar.
Is that right? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and he started playing, and all those kids, man, we just like, man, Granddaddy, is there anything you can't do? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He wore it was bald, he wore a stocking cap on his bald head to keep his head warm. Yeah. And my grandmother was, she was quite the matriarch. I mean,
good.
I look back on this stuff now, and some people don't have this. Right. You know, and it breeds character. Right. And you are the bridge to that. You would be their son if I had to look at the age group, as it were. And I would be, so I'm looking at 3 generations here. Okay. You know, and the things that you're telling me, it just etched and burned in my memory. You'd be over there crying, you say, you better be quiet before I give you something to come over there and cry about. You know, these things these sayings, like you say, your aunt coming swinging with that broom. She didn't have to do it but once. Yeah. You know, because you knew.
You're bringing up your grandparents really brings back wonderful memories to me in my upbringing, in that both my grandparents had gardens. We had to take care of those things, and we helped feed ourselves. And can a lot of our own food for winter and so forth.
That's it. I'm having flashbacks, Mr. Morgan. I told you we'd flow on this show. My grandmother had a rose garden, and when we screwed up, I had to go out there to the rose garden and get the sticks and switches to get my behind beat. That was the slowest walk in the history of mankind. Yeah, you know, you look at those things, man. These kids don't have a clue. They're too busy doing this. Yeah. You know? Well, it's something to be said, Mr. Morgan, for due process.
Right. Well, there's sometimes, even though both my kids are pretty well educated, one PhD, so forth, I didn't have to use a whip. And there's times when I have disagreements with them now. I'm wondering why should I have not spared the whip.
Spared the rod, spoil the child.
But we've been blessed. So
I heard that. Bill, what our time looking like there, bud? We got 30 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Peg RITV. I have one of Rhode Island. I call him one of Rhode Island's legend. That is Mr. Jerry Morgan. We've got more to do. There is a part 2.
Bling, 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 bling. He's a Rastaman doing his thing. You see, he got bling, 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 bling. Hey, laddie man. Some people have golden diamond rings, driving around with spinning rims, walking down the street in fancy things, but we really don't know anything. They just got bling.